I'm Amanda, and this is Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. Welcome to today's episode. Thank you so much for being here. Today we have Leah Wysong of TriStar Quilts. Now she is out there making beautiful heirloom quilts for people, and currently she is working on her first pattern release. It is set to come out April 1st, and it is called Stars and Stripes Forever. So keep an eye out for that, and let's welcome Leah. Thank you so much for joining me today, Leah. I'm so excited to chat with you, and so I want to know all the things, like, how did you get started into quilting?
Well, I have a fashion degree, fashion merchandising degree. And I learned, a lot of sewing and pattern making in college, but sewing clothing was not my forte. Like, I just did not enjoy it. And then right before our daughter was born, I wanted to make her a matching blanket that I had when I was little. And so I made her a little Bambi blankie. And it was just a whole cloth quilt essentially. And I really enjoy quilts. And then I started really with the idea of it when I couldn't find on Etsy one that looked like the Tennessee flag, like the state flag, not UT colors or whatnot, but the actual state of Tennessee flag. And so I just kept hold of that idea and made myself one, and then just kind of waited a couple years until I actually got to put it into motion with the business. But that's ultimately is where, just because I couldn't find what I wanted on Etsy, because that's the Google of crafty things.
Yeah, for sure. You're like, I need something crafty, let's go on Etsy.
Exactly. And it wasn't popping up for years, and so I was like, oh, good, we're still like, that's still my little niche that I'm into. And so I really took those steps and jumped into doing it.
Wow, that's so cool, because I think you can get these ideas, and I think you can get to quilting. So many people get to quilting through another avenue of, like, oh, I was in fashion design, or oh, I was in corporate apparel or whatever. But then it's so funny, the roads that lead to quilting, and just having that little spark of an idea and a little bit of know-how can get you so far. And so that's so cool. And I didn't even know that Tennessee was the TriStar state. So, like, your business, I was like, oh, that's such a cute name, and I wonder what the stars mean. And then I looked it up. I was like, oh, duh, it's Tennessee. And that's awesome. I love that. And so and you didn't have to, like, compete for that name or anything for your business. It was
I kept tabs on it for several years, thinking, okay, somebody's going to come up with that. Like, that's it's not that unique. And so I just kept tabs on it. And then in 2019 is when I bought the name for the website, and I just didn't do anything with it right away because I was still working full time. And so then with everything down here, it goes along with being TriStar. So I was like, well, there's my in, and like kind of, that name recognition and easy to remember, hopefully. And coming back to it. So
there's something to be said for that, because I think if your business name is too much of a mouthful, it's hard for people to be like, oh, it's I can't remember exactly what it is. But especially if you're, like, so associated with something that is, especially in your region, like, really well known, that's a good sell for your business too. Like, people can remember that so easily. So that's awesome. So what year was your first quilt completed? Like, has it been a while, or just a few years?
So 2013 was when I made my, like, first whole cloth quilt. And then probably the beginning of 2015, I think, is when I made my first, like, Tennessee flag quilt for myself.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't been quilting that long, so I'm just always curious how long people have been doing it, just because I mean, it feels like forever because it's all I do now. But for only having started about 6 years ago, like this month, actually, February was like right before Valentine's Day was when my friends forced me to make a quilt against my will.
That's awesome.
But
yeah, I'm happy to be doing it full time now. When I have to, of course.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Between momming.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, and I think it's such a cool thing too, because you can do it kind of at night, or, in between, you can get little bits done. It's not like a huge task. I mean, some parts of it are, right. There's some where you're like, I just need like some hours alone.
Exactly.
But most of the time you can get little bits done here and there, naps and all
definitely that. Yeah, exactly. I can get them all to a nap at the same time. I'm like, yes, some uninterrupted quilting real quick.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Oh my gosh. So I saw that you were attempting like a Marine Corps quilt for your husband.
Yes, I did. So it ended up being like all elements of it. So I traditionally pieced, I appliqued, and I embroidered all of his quilt. And it was like I freehanded most of it. So because I wanted it to be really large and not just, something small to cuddle under. And so I did it. I finally finished it, but then I was like, oh no, it looks like a postage stamp. I was like, wow, I didn't really think this one through. Like in my head, it did not look postage stampy, but
yeah. Oh my gosh. That's cool. My brother, yeah. I was gonna say, like, I would guess my brother was a Marine, and he was in for 8 years, so he didn't like retire, but it's like funny how much they love like Marine Corps stuff. Like
yeah.
That's such an awesome and unique gift that you could give him, though, to like commemorate that with him. And I know it's like a big deal, and coming back into civilian life is kind of like
it is. They definitely.
Yeah, that's so cool though. Do you have a full picture of it posted anywhere?
I do not. I
I
probably should, but I have not ever posted it.
Well, I want to see it. So even if you just send it to me.
I'll get some photos of it and see if he'll give it up and let me
like just
photograph it outside of it.
Like, you hold it, I'll take a picture so it doesn't leave your hands.
Exactly.
That's so funny. How many quilts do you think you have in your house?
Oh my. Each of our kids have theirs. Let's see. Probably 40. And that includes like some that I've made to sell and whatnot, but probably 40.
Yeah, that feels like a good number. I probably have over 20 just in my house, but then like, yeah, we're at my mom's where we do our business. We've got so many because we have a bunch for sale, and she just makes quilts all the time. She's like, look what I made this weekend. I'm like, what?
Oh man, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm like, must be nice to be like a retired person, essentially. Like, I mean, we run our business, but she's, that's all we do. And it's at her house, so she can sew whenever she wants. I'm like,
better.
Cool.
And uninterrupted.
Yeah. So, but it's fun because she's able to like help my niece start learning to quilt, and because she's started to show interest, and she finished a quilt top, and now she's like ready to quilt it. So she's like, okay, she'll call her. She's like, okay, Nana, when can I come quilt it? My mom's like, well, we need more than just like 2 hours after school. Like, it's going to take a little bit of time, but.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
My daughter's slowly starting to get into liking quilting, but she likes all crafts. So eventually she will. And she has asked me a couple times to use the smaller machine. And so I'm like, I will gladly set it up for you if you want to legitimately learn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, it's exciting because like you don't want to push them, but you want to encourage them to do it. So you're like trying to hide your excitement and not make it uncool by having like a mom freak out.
Yeah. Like, hold on, let me get everything for you.
You're like, and this and this and this, and then they're like, I was just kidding. I didn't know it was gonna be like
not
this.
That much.
Yeah, so we've been like tiptoeing around my niece, like showing interest because she's the same. She loves all crafty stuff. She's always calling to come over and be like, okay, we're gonna have a crafty weekend, okay? And then
I love that.
Yeah, it's super cute. But yeah, she's just like kind of recently, like, oh, I would say over like the last year, she's kind of started to show interest in like, hey, can I sew that part of that? And I'm like, sure, of course, let me show you. And just like trying not to be like, because it's
Yeah.
like, I don't have daughters. My older, my sons are older and leaving the house and, not interested in sewing, that's for sure. But like, so it's fun to have like another girl in the family be leaning towards it, because my older niece is like, I'm gonna go play basketball. We're like, okay, bye. So
Oh,
it's just funny to see like who the creative bug pops up in the family, because my little sister's not that way. Like, she's crafty in other ways, but like quilting and sewing isn't her thing either. So it's just funny. But and so how old are your older two kids?
um, one's about to be 16 in June,
Okay.
and then our only daughter, is about to be 10.
Oh my gosh, okay. Cool. And then then the three youngers are all boys. Wow. That's fun. Yeah, I feel that. Like, I mean, I have my sister, but like most of my cousins are boys. Like, I have my two boys. Like, there's just so many boys around. I'm like, oh my God.
Thankfully has cousins, all girl cousins that she gets to hang out with, and fulfill that need for a sister and the
Mhm.
creative side that
Yeah.
they all have as well. So,
Oh, that's so nice.
and to get a little peace and quiet, from the rowdy boys.
Hmm. Yeah, that's definitely needed. Like a little respite. I used to shut my door as a kid and just feel like nobody talked to me. Oh man, that's so funny. Oh yeah, what are we gonna do? And I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, oh, we should go to breakfast. And then I was like, we just went to breakfast. And I was like, oh, that was last Sunday. And I'm like, oh, how's it already Sunday? Like, it was just this like tornado of craziness in my brain. But like, I don't
I feel like
know.
that every day too.
Yeah, I can imagine with all the little kids and but
Everything just starts to run together, especially
mhm.
if I don't have a calendar actively pulled up or hung up somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. So when did you start doing your business full time?
So in 2020, I officially left my full-time job and started to slowly like launch stuff, like built in Etsy,
Hmm.
um, got branding,
Yeah.
squared away. And so 2020, I would say the beginning of 2020 is when I really started the business side of, TriStar Quilts. So,
Yeah. Good timing.
yeah,
To kind of just be at home and hunker down and
exactly. It was just like many, like, you had time.
yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I was still teaching full time, so there was no breaks for my school, but that's what, like, after that I was like, I can't do that again. And so that's when I quit, was at the end of the 2020-2021 school year. So I did one full year in COVID teaching, and I was like, see
yeah.
ya. But yeah, that just felt like a good time to like really like focus in and like get serious about, focusing in on the business and making that happen. And at least for me, that gave me like a lot of energy to make it more like solid for myself.
Exactly.
But so cool. I love that you just get to be home with your kids and do your business and be a boss mama. And it's like super fun.
It is. It's just finding time to like, like I would like to, and just,
Hmm.
spend hours on end. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it for the world, that's for sure.
Yeah. That's like, I think parenting is like that. You kind of like wish for more time, but then you miss them when they're not with you, or like, I can't wait for bedtime, but then you're like staring at them asleep, like, oh, they're so cute. Like, I should be sewing.
Yep. I did that just the other day, and I took a picture of the littlest sleeping. And I was like, look how cute he is. And I sent it to my husband. When really I should have been doing something productive and not just, staring
Yeah.
at how they are.
But I mean, isn't
Especially when
that
they all nap
productive?
at one time.
Yeah. You're like, oh, right, I've got stuff to do before one of them wakes up and gets everybody else up. And then the chaos begins again. But I think it'll be kind of cool for you though, because as they get a little older, like your 3-year-old will kind of start to take charge, and like everybody can kind of be, entertained by each other instead of by you until they start a fire or something. I don't know.
Oh, that's so likely with our three too.
Mischievous.
Anything. Yes, but no, they're pretty good. They do keep themselves entertained. For the most part.
Yeah.
You know, as long as I'm in the room with them.
Right.
A lot of times I end up moving my quilting stuff to the table out in the kitchen, just so they can keep an eye on me. Because otherwise, if I walk into my sewing room, they like, what?
Yeah.
Where did you go?
Like,
You're not here to watch us?
yeah.
So,
You're like, I'm just right here. But yeah, they're like, I need to see you.
exactly. So I move my stuff out to the table frequently just to, cut or press or anything, just so they can see me and not, because they don't want anything to do with me, for the most part. But
yeah,
it
but if
does
they
help.
can't see you, it's trouble.
It does.
Kids are so funny like that. You're like, what? You're like, get out of here, mom. But then, yeah, if they don't have tabs on you, not vice versa, then they're like, hey, where were you? I'm like, you didn't want to see my face. What do you mean, where was I? They're so silly. Did they like any crafty stuff, or are they just kind of?
They do. Well, they like to play with the scissors. They're just starting to show interest, or at least a 3-year-old in. So I'm like, okay, well, you can't cut anything in mommy's sewing room. You can only cut mommy approved items.
Yeah.
So trying to teach them that, and they do love crafty stuff. They watch their sister craft as well, and so they want to paint or glue stuff to paper and whatnot. So
Yeah.
they do get into the crafty stuff, and they can point a quilt out anywhere. They'll be like, hey, mine does a quilt.
Oh.
So I'm like, yeah, that is a quilt. Good job.
Yeah.
Now I just need to get them to start recognizing patterns. I'll start working on that.
You're like, this is an Ohio star. This. You're like, all the traditional blocks, just point them out. I think that's so fun though, because I think like so many people don't really know what they're looking at when they're looking at a quilt, and it's just not in their realm of like existence, their reality. They're like, I don't know, they just think of like old granny stuff. So I think it's fun, like even my kids, like I was started quilting before my oldest one left, and they were kind of like, oh, that's cool, like they have an appreciation for it. They might not quilt, but like they at least know now when they see a quilt, they're like, oh my gosh, so much work goes into those, and they can appreciate what's there. And like the quilts that I've made for them, they cherish and love and like keep special, because they're like, I don't want to wreck this, I don't want to mess it up. And so it's just nice to know that there's now more people in the world that have an appreciation for the craft, even if they're not participating.
Exactly. And then they hold that more near and dear to their heart, and they're not so quick to be like, oh, I don't need this, or all the ones that they have, I made labels for them, and then the year that I made it for them, just so that they'll they know it's for them, and love. I don't make hand labels for all quilts, but for like special ones like that for family, and for memory quilts I will, but like I'll hand embroider some labels to go to match the quilt.
Yeah, we started, because we got an embroidery sewing machine, just it was like a super good deal, and so we're like, gotta get it. And so we've been making labels too, like, and I'm always like, oh, I'm gonna make a label for my quilts, and then I forget for mine. And it's not like I'm making a ton of quilts for myself, but like even for my kids, like I didn't make labels for their quilts because I didn't think of it at the time. And now that I have the resources, I'm like, oh shoot, I should have made, can I like undo the binding on their quilts and like stick it in and make them one. But since my youngest one is graduating this year, like he wants a quilt, and I let him pick out the colors and stuff and kind of the general design pattern. And so he's super tall. He's like 6'2". So I want to make it big enough for him to like cuddle under, but I'm like, okay, this time I am going to make a label, just because I don't want him to forget that it was special for some reason, like, I just know for me too, like if I see something of like my husband's that he's like, oh, I don't know, we can get rid of that. I'm like, no, look, it says your name on it. Like, like it means something to me that it was made special for him. So then I'm like trying to keep those things. And so I'm like, maybe one day if he, you know, has a significant other that is going through his things, if he's trying to get rid of stuff, they'll see that label and be like, don't get rid of this. This was made just for you.
Exactly. And hopefully I hope for the same thing for my kids, that they'll, you know, have that appreciation and be like, oh, no,
Yeah.
pass that down. They can pass it down to their kids. That was my hope anyway. But
Yeah.
teaching my daughter, and I'm like, there's certain quilts, like, do not ever get rid of this. Like, I'm trying. So I'm currently trying to attempt to do a Joseph's coat quilt by hand piecing, and I plan to hand quilt it.
Wow.
And so I just like cut a bunch out, so it's like one that I just do willy-nilly here and there. And I was like, Catherine, never get rid of this. Don't ever get rid of this quilt. Like, it will be forever. Just let it stay in the family.
Yeah, you're like, do you see what I'm going through here?
See how long this is taking?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I think it helps too if you have like that connection with your kids. You can tell them like, don't ever get rid of this. And then I feel like that's something that they hang on to. Like my mom said, I can't ever get rid of this. That's so funny. But like, yeah, I just know there's just certain things. And it's fun that like when they know it was made specifically for them, it's like, oh, I'm gonna hang on to this. And I think it like kind of subconsciously buries in their brain that they have to keep it, you know. You're like, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. You can't get rid of it. Even if it's embarrassing that it's like Minecraft and Harry Potter, who cares? You're a grown man, get over it.
You'll look back at that and you'll be like, oh yeah, I did love that when I was, 9.
I think that's fun because they know if they're like, I want a quilt, I'm like, okay, and I make it. Like, yeah, my older one is in the Space Force and he was home visiting. He saw a piece of Minky just like in our office at my mom's house because we were over there for, I think it was like Thanksgiving. But anyway, he was like, whatever you make me, I don't care. I just want these color blues, like this, like, and this on the back. It was like a piece of gray seal. And I was like, it's only going to be as big as this piece of fabric is. Like, it's not going to be huge. He's like, I don't care. I just need to like be under this at all times. I'm like,
oh, I love it.
Yeah. He literally like wrapped it around himself and stayed in the quilt the whole time we were there. And
oh, I love it.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, he's still my little buddy.
That's the reaction we want from every quilt, right? Is it for someone to just wrap up and be like, I'm never getting out of this.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, please use it. Please wear it. Make it, softer by using it. Like, I try to convince people, they're like, well, I don't want to ruin it. And I'm like, I would rather you ruin it and have to fix it because you're using it than know that you've kept it tucked away in a box and like unseen, unused, unloved, like not unloved, but
I know. Like, I always tell people, like, they are made to be loved, they're made to be used, they are made to be, drugged through the mud. Like like I would rather repair it a little bit if it gets messed up from, heavy use than for it to just sit in a cupboard and not ever get the glory that it's meant for.
Exactly. There is that kind of that fine balance of like, okay, it's to be treasured and to be held on to and cared for, but also like use the heck out of it. Like, I love seeing an old worn out quilt, like, oh yes, this thing got used and it got loved. And that's like all you could the most you can ask for from a quilt, right? Oh, well, that's good that your kids are growing up around that too, because then they'll have that kind of understanding. And if they ever get into quilting, then they can pass that along too, because I think it just helps the more of us that are out there spreading that message, like, no, use your quilts. Love them.
I did try to make everybody in our family, all the married couples, quilts one year for Christmas presents. So I started in like the January right after Christmas, and it took me a whole year. Because I just kind of did it here and there, because this was when I was still working full time. And so it took me forever to get them done. But I think at the time, there were 10 siblings, my husband's side,
wow.
that were married, so that they all got one that roughly met their like house aesthetics or their favorite colors, so they could all have one. And so hopefully as the rest marry off, that my plan is to like get them one that matches what everybody else has. And so like when I handed it to them, I was like, they are made to be loved and used, like use them daily.
Yeah.
Use them as your picnic blanket, like use them as your cover plants, you know, when it gets colder.
Yeah. You're like, no, literally use it. Yeah, that's so fun. I think just giving that, I think people don't really expect like what quilts are now as like a gift. And so when they get them, they're almost like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. And I think it's funny because like we always, my friends and I always say like we win baby showers because we always take a quilt that's like made specifically for that family. And like they're always like, oh my gosh. I'm like, just open mine last when nobody else is here because I don't want to embarrass anybody.
I'm with you. That's what I did for friends of ours that got married and made them a black and blue because he's on the police force. And
Okay.
I was just like, okay, open it quietly and like just put it aside, don't open it up. Just you guys look at it later when you get home and like, you know, ooh and ah over it.
Yeah, it's like just save that for later. Yeah, it was. Yeah, my friend just had a baby in November, and at her shower, of course, I took her quilt, and I was kind of glad it was like kind of towards the back end of the gifts because she's so well loved, and she just had tons of stuff to open, and I got a lot of amazing handmade stuff from some of her family, and I just didn't want to be like, yeah. When she opened it, I was like slinked in the corner, like. She was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, just look at it later. I wrote her name in it somewhere. And like, she was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Everybody was like, oh, okay.
Aw.
Sorry, not sorry, because it's the best.
Exactly. And like, contact me when you want one that looks just as cute.
Yeah. And everybody's like, you made that? I'm like, yeah, I have a quilting business. And they're like, oh my gosh. So it is kind of cool to like a way to get your name out there too, like people to see your work in person instead of just like, oh, I have a friend who does that. And they're like, oh, cool. But
until they see that product and then they're like, oh, wow, like, you mean a quilt? Like, this is not what I expected. Like, they're thinking probably, you know, something, I don't know. I think quilts are beautiful, so I can't really.
I know.
But, you know, they're thinking some not as like modern, I guess, or, you know, fun or bright or vibrant. So,
yeah, they're expecting like the granny calicos of the 50s, 40s, whatever. But yeah, so it's kind of funny because yeah, people will be like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a quilter. And they're like, oh, I'm like, no, let me show you. So I'll show pictures. I'm like, these are, and they're like, what? I didn't realize. It just like opens their brain that there's a whole industry, a whole world out here of people just aiming to make modern stuff that we can have in our homes that isn't like your grandma's quilt that's stuffed in a cedar chest somewhere. Like,
especially when they see one that has Minky on the back and you're like, I didn't realize it could be so cuddly. Like, you know, that throws them through a loop too.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I never want to get out from under this.
Yeah.
Like, let me just keep petting it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where you get people too. You get them hooked and you just put Minky on something and then they're like, okay, I'm convert. I need 85 quilts in my house. And it's funny how many people we've like, because we sell Minky out with our shop and we have yardage that will allow like our clients to purchase if they want backing on their quilts or whatever. And anyway, so we'll like, oh, what about this? Because they're like, oh, I don't know about backing yet. And we're like, well, we have Minky, come check our stuff out first. And then if you need to go get backing, whatever, like we can go shop for it or you can go get it. And so then we're like really pushing. We're like, you're gonna love this, you're gonna love it. And they're like, well, I heard you're not. There's just like so many weird rumors or myths about it that go around that's like people are like, oh, I was told that long armors won't quilt on this. And I'm like, that's a bold-faced lie.
It's definitely a personal preference that they don't want to quilt on it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily they can't.
Yeah. And that's why I said, I'm like, some people don't like it because it is kind of slippery, but once you understand how to work with it and you've done it enough times, it's like not a big deal at all. Just keep a vacuum handy.
Exactly.
And then
Oh,
you're fine. Yeah. So I'm with you. I want Minky. I put Minky on most of my quilts. These two that are behind me are the only, like, two of, I think I have one more that doesn't have Minky on it. The rest of them all have Minky. I just can't help myself.
I need to use Minky more because I love it so much.
Mm-hmm.
I only have a few that have Minky on the back.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, because we've, I've asked clients like, oh, do you want Minky or cotton? And they're like, oh, cotton, it's way too hot here. And I'm like, oh, right. I have to think about like where people are. Because, yeah, in Texas, you probably don't want a big, heavy, hot quilt. But, here where we're close to mountains and we get cold weather, it's like all I want all the time, even in the summer.
Oh, yeah. Tennessee doesn't stay that cold. So,
yeah.
Probably why I haven't gravitated for backing quite as often as much as I love it. So,
yeah. Yeah, it's like, okay, I'll try to be a little practical, I guess. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to see your new pattern release, and I can't wait to like see all your testers and what they've come up with, because that sounds really cool.
Definitely. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on, and I love to get to chat with you in person and instead of just listening to the podcast. So, a little bit of, fangirling at the moment. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you again so much, Leah. And I look forward to our future chats and getting to know you more in our relationship.
Definitely. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you.